Hello everyone and welcome to Brickcats. My channel is for anyone who enjoys custom LEGO creations, likes saving money, and or those looking to get into custom building. If you're a fan of my channel or are interested in supporting what I do, please consider liking this review, subscribing, or leaving a comment. Each like, subscription, and comment helps others find my channel, and I greatly appreciate your support. Today I am reviewing designer thomin's TIE Fighter model, available for €9 on Rebrickable, or about $10.30 in mid-June 2025. Without any substitutions, I was getting 4 stores and $187 without shipping and tax, or about $224 with shipping and tax. In my reviews, I offer my opinions on aesthetics and model features, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and I close out with my overall impression and pricing information in the conclusion. If you're watching this review, I assume you bought the instructions or are interested in buying them. I also assume a basic level of familiarity with Brickling's ordering system and LEGO nomenclature. I only use genuine LEGO bricks and I always purchase the instructions. I create these reviews for my own personal enjoyment and in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. thomin's TIE Fighter measures 9.5 inches front to back, 9.5 inches side to side, and just over 12.5 inches on the stand and 11.5 inches off the stand. The cockpit ball's basic outline is an 8-stud wide spherical shape and utilizes the 3x3 round corner bricks that are very popular with TIE Fighter cockpits. With 6x6 dishes on both the top and the bottom, the cockpit ball looks good overall, maybe a little busy on account of the 2x2 curved slopes and the gaps in the corner bricks, but not too distracting to me personally. The cockpit does fit a minifigure, but getting them in there is a bit of an adventure. It's easiest to build the pilot into the model. You can get one in there after the fact, but I found it easiest to do so by taking off most of the front of the fighter. The cockpit is quite roomy for a TIE Fighter LEGO model, and there's lots of red and black detailing in there, and even a LEGO chair to sit down in, so nice and comfortable. One notable omission you might notice is any representation of the chin cannons. There's definitely room to include them, so I think this is a pretty significant omission. Around the back, the twin ion engines are in basically the right spot. These wedges here, I think, are a suggestion of the slightly elongated cone on the back of the fighter, which in turn necessitates jumper plates to get the trans-red round plates in the right spot. There are some vent tiles over some red studs in the rear section as well, for a nice little addition of detail. The bottom of the fighter is unremarkable except for the fact that it uses the dome piece, but also sits nicely on the display stand, which I'll get to a little bit later. The wing pylons look really good to me, and the designer has done a good job at the scale, tapering down to this narrow section in the middle before widening back up just before connecting to the wings. There's a Technic axle running through all of this, so the core are Technic bricks with snot connections surrounding them. The wing exterior are mostly tiled off and plate built. The advantage of this is generally a straightforward building process and few or minimal gaps, as the subassemblies generally fit together much better. The downside is that you have the anti-studs visible on the interior side. This bothers some but not others. Official sets of course use this building method, or at least they have so far, so the designer takes cues from the official sets as this is billed as a UCS model. For me, I don't mind the tiled or anti-stud look. The overall shape is pretty accurate, and there's some pretty simple but good looking details in here, complete with the specified tile print in the middle here. The diagonal support struts use hinge plates to get their angle, and I also like how the horizontal support right here is part of the wing build and therefore flush with the rest of the wing. I do wish there was an obvious way to fill in this little gap right here, but I also really like how the designer used the hinge piece here instead of the modified plate with bar. This connection is a little tight if you use the bar, so the hinge piece allows this to kind of just connect firmly but not have to put strain on this whole thing here. And past that, the only other very minor detail that I keep noticing is that there is definitely room to put another 1x1 plate in these gaps under the pylon sections here. And on the exterior side, since the tiles are so shiny, I actually noticed these gaps more than I expected, only because they reflect the light in a way that kind of just catches my eye. I guess maybe since I know that it's there, I automatically look for it now. The display stand is included in the parts list with the model, and the stand looks fine for what it is, and it is pretty cool to have a stand for a TIE Fighter model with a rounded bottom. And so the model sits very nicely like so. Unfortunately, the stand also creates the biggest visual issue for me, and that's the very obvious sagging of the wings. You can kind of see it right here, but here is a better picture. The wings are fairly heavy, and since they're only connected to the cockpit and pylon structure with that single Technic axle, there's just not enough clutch to keep this all in line. So while the stand is definitely novel, you could argue that it's better to display this model without it, as sitting on a flat table or a shelf prevents the wings from sagging. So I think this model looks really good overall. The wing issue and the lack of chin cannons together don't really make this a keeper for me personally. I think it is fairly easy, or would be fairly easy to add cannons, but I also kind of think you shouldn't have to. The wing sagging can be mitigated by not using the stand, but a rework of the wing connection would certainly be welcome as well. thomin's TIE Fighter and stand require 142 elements and 1,266 pieces. The cockpit windscreen specified is the dish 6x6 inverted, no studs with bar handle with Star Wars 8-spoke dark bluish gray frame and rivets tie cockpit pattern. Yikes. Part 18675 PB09. This is quite expensive in 2025, and I recommend substituting the more widely available variant, Part 18675 PB02. I'm not going to say that entire name again. The TIE Interceptor variant, Part 18675 PB23, is also rather inexpensive. The tile round 2x2 with bottom stud holder with black Star Wars TIE Fighter pattern, Part 14769 PB025. These are usually over $1 each, and the model calls for 2 of them. These are the printed tiles at either end of the wing pylons. I really like these tiles, and I have a bunch of them, but the tile round 2x2 with bottom stud holder with black Star Wars TIE Bomber pattern, Part 14769 PB578, is a very close match and much cheaper. For pricing purposes, I substituted in the TIE Bomber tile. For the top dish, the plain version is specified, Part 18675. I think the printed version for the TIE Advanced, Part 18675 PB01, looks great, and since I have a couple of them, that's what I used. But be warned, these are usually quite expensive, at least $7.25 in the US the last time I checked, and these nearly always add a store to your search results. The wedge plate 2x2 pentagonal with center stud and 1 1/2 raised tab on top, Part 27928, is no longer in production in light bluish gray, and the model calls for 4 of them on the pylons here. Since these go for a minimum of $1.25 each at the time I'm writing this in mid-June 2025, this is way too expensive for me, and I would substitute all of them for 4 tile modified 2x2 with studs on edge, Part 33909 in light bluish gray. This is what I used in my pricing research. Yeah, you do lose a little bit of detail here, but you can decide for yourself if you want to pay a total of, what is that, $5 for 4 elements. It's not worth it to me personally. As usual, I use the Brick Hunter extension to check the entire parts list against the Pick-a-Brick inventory. I do have an affiliate link that gives me a small percentage of the value of your purchase, so thank you in advance if you choose to use it. As a reminder, Pick-a-Brick orders over $35 ship for free, and if you spend more than $14 in the bestseller or standard categories, the handling fees are waived. I'll go over those results in the conclusion. thomin's thin cockpit UCS TIE Fighter model instructions have 179 steps, with each part or subassembly added in each step outlined in white against a reddish background. The red background wasn't an issue, but the white outline was, especially for a model that's predominantly light bluish gray and black, so I think a color like teal would have been easier to see. Generally, the build has you adding a reasonable number of pieces in a given step, so the build goes at a decent pace and took me about 4 hours with pre-sorting into the major categories. Overall, I found the instructions were usable, and I didn't have any major problems or experience any major obstacles to completing the model. I think any builder that has completed any of the larger official sets would be just fine, as the techniques are fairly standard and the designer does a good job with the flow of the build. It's very logical, for example, to build the cockpit and pylons first, and then the stand so you have a place to put it. The only specific issue I want to mention was in step 65, it took me a bit to figure out where these pieces actually went. This is the best, or I guess maybe it's a better term, the worst example of how that white outline can be a little difficult to see sometimes. My biggest issues with the instructions are more with the meta aspects of the steps. The designer opted for a stylized font. I'm not sure if this is Arabic or maybe some kind of stylized Arabic or whatever the font is or the script is. I'm not a huge fan of it. Step numbers in this font don't really add to the experience for me, and it kind of just makes it more difficult for me to read and figure out what we're actually supposed to do or tell where you are in the build. And the quantities of subassemblies you have to build are also in this font, and having to spend an extra second or two to decipher what should be obvious is kind of annoying after a while. And granted, this all stems from my opinion that you and I, as the builder, should be able to look at the instructions and basically immediately figure out what you have to do. So this unusual font and the white outline sometimes require an extra bit of thinking, and that in turn slows you down and takes your attention away from the actual build. This model is decently swishable, and the cockpit ball is very sturdy. Grip it something like this, and that's not an issue. There aren't any pieces that are easily going to come off, and the model will stand up to any reasonable amount of movement. And the major question mark, of course, is the wings and that Technic axle. While rolling it around, you can definitely feel the wings wobbling just a little bit, and I think it's only a matter of time before one of these comes very loose. You can see a little bit of separation in here, and you can push that back in. I will say that on mine at least, you never really get this flush, and you can never really get it to stay flush. You push it back in, you can see it flexing back out there. And you can also definitely see and feel the wings drooping as you pick this up. It's a little bit hard to see on camera, but there's a little bit of flexing that's noticeable. And that places more strain on those Technic axles there. And this is definitely the weak point in the wing pylon connection. Despite the issues I talked about with the wing drooping on the stand is very stable. And again, it is pretty cool to see, oops, well, if you do it right anyway. It is pretty cool to see that sit there very nicely. Stand is very stable. Oop, there you go. Stand is very stable, it's sufficiently wide to prevent any tipping in any direction, and this can stand up to quite a bit. Maybe not a cat or a child, but even with some pretty decent wobble there, this is not a feature of the stand by any means. I am exerting a fairly large amount of force here, so very stable stand, very nice on your shelf. In conclusion, this model gets a lot of things right. In particular, I love the display stand concept, and the wings are very well done. However, for me, the lack of the twin chin cannons and the drippy wings are major problems, and to add on the design choices for the instruction set, I can't say this model was a great experience. I did reach out to the designer via the Rebrickable messaging system last week, offering to discuss some of my concerns and recommendations, but after a week I didn't get a response. Not faulting them or anything like that, but if I hear back from them, I'll make sure I put in an update in the comments or something. So while I didn't particularly enjoy this model, I think the problems can be addressed without too much trouble, and it will result in a much better experience for everyone. Expense-wise, like I said earlier, without any substitutions, I got 4 stores and $187 without shipping and tax, or about $224 with shipping and tax. With my substitutions, that knocked it down to 3 stores and $168 without shipping and tax, or about $198 with shipping and tax. And going full pick-a-brick, my pick-a-brick total was $159. That includes tax, but I met the thresholds for free shipping and handling. The remaining 11 elements I had to get from Bricklink, I would get from 2 stores for about $15 without shipping and tax, or $28 with shipping and tax, for a total of $187. Instructions for this model are €9, or about $10.30 in the US depending on the exchange rate, and these are available on Rebrickable. There will be a link to where you can buy those in the description below. Thank you as always for watching my review of thomin's UCS TIE Fighter. If you've built the model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question about something I didn't cover, please leave your thoughts below in the comments. I'm very conscious that subscribers are earned and not deserved, so if you enjoy my content and want to see more, consider subscribing, leaving the video a like or a comment, or follow me on Instagram if you haven't already. Thank you, and I hope to see you back next time.